I say 2026 a few times. I mean 2025. Sorry about that. This is MJ Munoz bringing you a part of my Ishinomori celebration for 2026. Again, this is the Celebrate Ishinomori initiative for 2026, where I have re-reviewed Skullman. I've talked about Ishinomori and why I've been thinking about him so much, and just how cool he is in general, and some of the wonderful, beautiful things I find in his stories, particularly Kamen Rider and a little bit Skullman, I guess you could say. Now I want to talk about the men who made Kamen Rider. And I have heard about this thing for a long time. I've never read it before. I don't read Japanese. It's mostly available in Japanese. And fortunately for me, I was able to find a scanlation of it, but only of the first chapter. And from what I can tell, there are multiple chapters, at least 2, if not 3. However, I can't really tell how many there are total. So I am going to talk about this with you, and I'm going to start off by saying I am shocked and relieved, and I don't know, I feel kind of not special, because I'm not special in regards to this or because of this, but I feel, I don't know, somewhat validated by the fact that Chapter 1 is called The Crybaby Producer. And before I get into that, hold on real quick. So this is Kenichi Maeda, who did the artwork and I think the story as well for for Kamen Rider Spirits and Shin Kamen Rider Spirits, which it's only called Shin Kamen Rider Spirits because it moved from one weekly magazine to another, and now it's on hiatus, unfortunately, in like, I don't know, Tonkabon like 16 or 18 or something like that is out, and yeah, I don't know when we're getting the rest of the story, but I'd love to get more of it. But anyway, hopefully one day it'll happen. Anyway, but yeah, I was really pleased with this because I really like his artwork. But more importantly than the artwork, it's the story that's being told of the birth of Kamen Rider and how that all worked out. So, it's, well, real quick, again, it's beautiful. It's beautifully illustrated, and the story, I feel like, is probably, fairly accurate and fairly concise, but there's more to it than this. But it starts with the idea phase of coming up with a new hero for MBS, which is the network. But Toei was involved from the beginning, which I was correct about, but MBS is, let me see if I can find it, the Manichi Broadcasting System. So they requested the show be made, and they requested that Toei make it, and they told them they had no budget, so they'd have to make it on the cheap for sure, which is kind of funny. A lot of Western fans talk about how Tokusatsu has no budget, and that's part of the charm of it. And I don't necessarily agree that the fact that they have no budget is part of the charm, but there is a quote that I'm misremembering. I can't remember the exact quote, that says the more restrictions you have on something when you're designing it or working on it, the more elegant your choices have to be in order to make it successful. Now that's very much a butchering of a quote about permaculture, which is about lifestyle design, garden design, and making natural and human systems interact with each other in a more efficient, more beneficial way. But it does apply to this because at some point, Hirayama gets set up. Who's this producer? He's the crybaby producer. He gets set up with one of his coworkers, who is, let's see, it says you, right? Yes. Yeah, he gets set up with, well, I'm just going to read this. Toru Hirayama, also known as the crybaby producer. He's a legendary producer who would go on to create many of Toei's superheroes. And I see here Inazuman and Kikaider, and those 3 demon guys, and the giant robot twins, and Go Ranger, and what's his name? Birdman Ninja, who of course is Henshin Ninja Arashi. Anyway, and then there's this other guy he's working with here. It's a head of business office, Toei Tokyo Production Department, Yusaku Uchida. He was 2 years younger than Hirayama during their time at Kyoto Studio. I would imagine he was 2 years younger than him throughout their lives. Get it? Because you're always younger than somebody who you're younger than. Anyway, so apparently Giant Robo was, or whatever it was called, was being aired, the final episode of it, and Hirayama was crying because of the sacrifice that Giant Robo made to protect Earth, and people kind of thinking he's ridiculous for that. And I gotta say, I called this Kamen Rider show Rider Tears because of both the tear marks that Kamen Rider has on him, and which is touched on in this manga, and how emotional I get over Kamen Rider, because there's something in it that just speaks to me, which I won't belabor right now. I'll just go on and say it's interesting. MBS asks for Toei to produce a show, and there's going to be no budget for it. So Yusaku Uchida goes to Toru Hirayama, and he asks him how to make this motorcycle show, and he's saying that they're going to have to produce it outside, and they're going to be using an abandoned warehouse for part of it. I don't know if that's for set design or if that's for production of it or what, but basically they're going to have to work with the barest thing they can, and it's really cool. One of them says it's going to be, I think Uchida says it has to be a guerrilla production, otherwise it won't work. They won't be able to afford it. Anyway, so that's like, guerrilla warfare. And that means, you get the shots wherever you can, however you can, and it's interesting. There was even talk about like unions and strikes and things like that that they talked about a little bit, which is interesting. I didn't know that those were problems for them in Japan at the time. But yeah, it's interesting. They're talking about using the barest things that they can and making this like motorcycle action show, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it, and they don't know what to do with it, so they go ahead and go to Shotaro Ishinomori, who was known as Ishimori at the time. He was already successful with Cyborg 009 and some other things. So Hirayama goes to him, and Ishimori gives him the design for Crossfire at the time, which was a guy in a cool motorcycle suit with a kind of four-pointed shuriken ninja star type deal on the face, where you could see his face through there. And Hirayama likes it, and so do a bunch of other people at Toei. But Ishinomori actually thinks it's not grotesque enough, it's not realistic enough, and that it's too cool. And so he gives him another design, which is similar to Skullman. It's like a Skull Rider, and yeah, it's a Skull Rider design, and it looks pretty freaking cool. But it's not what they end up using, because people at the department, like the licensing and toy department, said the skull was like too extreme and they didn't want to have to work with it. It was going to be a hard sell, I guess, on toys. But in the manga, Hirayama says it's going to be kind of like Golden Bat or Ogon Bat, and anyway, or also known as Fantomas in other countries. And yeah, Hirayama tries to sell that pretty hard to MBS, and they initially like it, but eventually they can't do the skull thing. They don't want to. The sales side doesn't want to have to sell a skull, so that's put aside, and they're still working on this motorcycle thing in the background. And there's somebody, Takaichi Hirose, Deputy General Director of MBS. He and Hirayama have a conversation in this manga, and they both talk about their experiences in the war, and because this is post-World War II, and Hirayama was actually a volunteer in the kamikaze program, but he was too short apparently to go and be a kamikaze pilot, which I would think, if you're gonna fly into something, it doesn't matter how tall you are, but maybe height has to do with mass, and he wasn't gonna be heavy enough. I don't know. I don't know what that is about, but that was kind of strange. But this other fellow, Takaichi, hold on. Hirose, he was like a motorcycle riding guy, which Hirayama conjectures that's why Hirose wanted to go ahead and do the motorcycle hero, why he highlighted that, because like the little kids thought it was cool, and there was like a youth culture, which I think is like teens, of motorcycles as well. It's fast, it's daring, it's exciting, all that good stuff. They even use the phrase motocross in here, which I don't know that that would have been a term of the day or not, but regardless, it's used here. And Hirayama, actually, we get pretty soon an insight into how things were for him in the war when he's talking with his wife. Oh, it's after he sees the revision of Skullman into a grasshopper, and Ishinomori is saying, just off the top of his head, hey, what if he, he's a grasshopper, so what if he, actually, uses the power of the wind, and he fights for nature, and it's about, nature versus destruction, and things like that. And it was very much just like a ping-pong, back-and-forth collaborative exchange of ideas, and it was not made in a vacuum. It was made in collaboration. It was made with, I don't know, just like with this very interesting back and forth. And that process is interesting to me because as they're talking, Ishinomori keeps adding to the sketch. He talks about the turbine on his belt. And eventually Hirayama, when he presents this, he says that, you know, even kids can draw it, which is cool for marketing. And I don't know, it's just really interesting to see these different aspects all coming together. And then Hirayama talks to his wife about how when he was in the war, he had this horrible experience where he was helping clean up these corpses that, you know, they were taking people's dead bodies. And actually, I'm going to look at the historical context of it so I can talk about what exactly he meant by that and get back to you. So I found a quick article, or I'm going to read an excerpt from an article. During the so-called Great Tokyo Air Raid on March 10th, 1945, the urban area centered around the Shitamachi part of the city was selected as the primary bombing target. The entirety of the area from the Sumida River to the Arakawa River, present-day Sumida Ward and Koto Ward, and many neighborhoods on the west bank of the Sumida River, such as Asakusa and Nihonbashi, were completely reduced to ash. It is estimated that more than 100,000 people died that night. The causes of death included burning, suffocation, drowning, freezing, and more. Throughout World War II, Chongming, Dresden, and many other cities were bombed indiscriminately. Note 1. Furthermore, Hiroshima and Nagasaki were also hit with nuclear bombs, much like those other air raids. The Great Tokyo Air Raid was one of the bombings with the highest casualties in the war. So, yeah, and as I was looking, there was, like, stuff that said, you know, baked, boiled to death. Like, just, it was awful, awful bombing of civilians, people in civilian areas. And there's actually a bit in the manga where Hirayama's thinking back to it, and this actually made me cry. There's this just pile of dead bodies, as people are trying to flee, I guess, as they got caught anyway, and there's like a mother and child, someone holding their baby. Yeah, it looks like a mother, or father. They're just so burned, it's hard to see, honestly, and Hirayama runs over. He runs over to them, and he's holding the mother and baby together, and he's telling the other guys who are working not to separate them because, you know, well, I don't know why, but just the image of a dead mother holding her baby, something powerful. And he's saying the idea of Kamen Rider being someone who will, as Ishinomori said, it looks like someone who would appear like the wind and fight like a storm, is just so beautiful. And like he wanted that kind of hero to be around, and so he's creating the show with that kind of hero in collaboration with all these other people. And I think, I don't know, maybe something about that is why I love Kamen Rider. I'm not sure. There's definitely the redemption aspect of it, and the idea of, like, you know, your darkness doesn't have to define you, that I find is true in Kamen Rider. But maybe it's really like, maybe I'm feeling some of Hirayama's heart and some of the hearts and souls of these other people imprinting on their work in Kamen Rider, and that's why I'm so attached to it. And then, like, there's this thing about how some of the people, after Fujioka got injured, they wanted to just write him off the show, and, like, write the actor off the show and say that he was caught by Shocker, and they did more surgery on him, and they changed the look of his face so they could just replace him and keep it as Takeshi Hongo. But Hirayama said, no, heroes never die. We're not going to kill our hero like that. We're going to do something else and make it work. And they went ahead and did that, and that is why Ichimoji Hayato, you know, became, or, you know, Rider 2 came into the show, and then the double writers reunited in episode 40-something, and that, you know, that dramatically actually increased Kamen Rider's popularity. Like, the ratings went way up in that part of the show, like, as a result of Takeshi Hongo coming back. And I don't know how I would have felt all these decades later watching it if Takeshi Hongo had just been replaced or rewritten with another character, another actor, because there's something about him, Hiroshi Fujioka specifically, that is, like, in the show is very appealing, very dramatic, very, I don't know what, there's something that he brings to it that definitely makes me love Kamen Rider as well. Something in his performance, something in his look, it's just, he's got a whole package there, and it really works. And not like I dislike Ichimonji, it's just, he's not Hongo. And, yeah, he's just not Hongo. There's a difference for me, and I was so glad to learn that he did come back. I found that out years ago, but then reading about how Hirayama, made that happen in the show, is really amazing. And yeah, it's just like, it's very moving, it's very interesting. So Hirayama, Ishinomori, let me see who else. Who did I mention? There was Takechi. Let me see. I want to credit everybody as well as I can. Takechi Hirose. And Yusaka Uchida and more, the people at MBS who ordered it, like, these are some of the people who made Kamen Rider. These are the men who made Kamen Rider. And I really thought this was a fun read. It was very enjoyable. It's very cool. Morita's art style, of course, is a joy to look at. And the way it put together the story was really fun. And I really enjoyed it. And I found like there was something even deeper in this thing that I already love and have all this affection for. And it honestly made me love Kamen Rider even more than I already do. And that's quite a feat. Quite a feat. And I think there's more. I found chapter 1. I don't know where the other chapters are. I haven't quite found them yet, but I see on HLJ I can get the raw, Japanese version of this, and I might just buy it just to look at the artwork, because that could be pretty cool. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say for now. Check out mjmunoz.com to follow everything else I'm doing. I'm planning on, now that I'm over some personal issues, getting back into more aggressively covering tokusatsu and getting back into my writing. And if you go to growbugs.com, GROBUGS.com, you will find, hopefully very soon, some updates on the production of my middle grade book that has magical bugs battling monsters and protecting kids, and one kid in particular for this first set of books. And hopefully I'll be releasing updates on that soon and putting up a pre-order, and you can check that out.